Hello, my dear viewers and subscribers. I hope that everything is functioning right now because this stream has just begun, or it ought to have begun, and I'm, you know, still pretty unused to, doing live streaming considering that this is my third time hosting this type of stream on StreamYard. But it seems, at least to me, that everything is working right now. We do not seem to have any viewers currently. So I will maybe just wait a bit until people fall in. Oh, there seems to be at least one viewer right now. Or at least some viewers coming in right now, at least according to the statistics. Which means that I might actually start now with this live stream. I've been waiting right now for people to get into the live stream and watching here. So, oh, hello, Taha. It feels good to see at least someone coming here. This is going to be, me doing these live stream presentations, and just like the previous two live streams that I did, you and others might ask questions about the subjects that I'm discussing in these live streams, and or any other subject that you might want to ask about. These live streams are going to be pretty relaxed and not be that strict, sticking to a strict structure. But I'm generally going to have a material that I'm going to present here and discuss a bit about. But if you or anyone else in the among the viewers want to ask any questions, I'm always open for it. Cool, good. So maybe I should begin to present what is going to be the topic of today. And that is going to be discussing religion. And I'm currently once again trying to find how I'm going to, begin to show the PowerPoint, because this worked last time. Why does it not work right now? Sorry. Technical issues, trying to, making the best of the situation. But anyway, religion is a pretty important subject, don't you agree, people? And I thought that since it's so connected to a lot of the things that I do generally on this channel, it's connected to both culture, history, and I also deal a lot with religion, and especially with Islam, but also a bit with Christianity. I thought actually dedicating some live streams to the subject would, be important or, suitable. Why? Oh, God. So, then I will have to do this. It seems to work now, at least. Yeah, good. Usually you have a direct function in order to, go directly to share a certain document directly up on the screen, but I couldn't get it to work with the PowerPoint presentation for some reason. So I will just have to share the entire screen like this. I beg for forgiveness, my viewers, for these problems with the technical side. of streaming. Again, I'm pretty new to this, and I've not done this much before. And it also, you know, kind of made me kind of confused that because this worked before on the last stream, so I don't know what problem is currently. But usually on stop screen here, you will have an option to, or rather, not stop screen, but it's, here usually you have present here, and then you have, the option here to, select a specific file to show, and that didn't work for some reason with the PowerPoint. Yes, exactly. That is what I will do now. I just try to explain why it was problematic right now. Anyway, in the previous live stream, we were discussing the academic study of religion, studying religion academically. But what we are going to discuss right now is discussing religion, which is not the same thing. Because discussing religion generally in a more popular way or in a more everyday way, or even in a context outside of academia, is discussing religion in a very different way from studying religion or discussing it academically, as the goals and methods employed and reasons for discussing religion generally are a bit different in everyday life or in even higher conversations that aren't academic but are, connected to religion. Usually, unlike studying religion, where you usually do the study in order to get more information about the religion, or in order to study how people interact in their life with the religion, or how the religion influences people. Discussing religion in a more populist way, or in a more everyday way, or even in a more prescriptive way in how you should act, is done to convince people, not educating people or to spread information, treating religion as a subject that is a neutral subject that doesn't have its own value system. Rather, when you're discussing religion every day, you're usually discussing it as a value system or as a system of thinking in relation to something, or in itself with another believer or with a non-believer. It is usually done to convince people or to discuss particular issues, like how do we as believers interpret this, or how do we not interpret this, often regarding various religious claims or moral principles. So, as a believer or an unbeliever, you might discuss a matter as being, morally right or morally wrong. Whereas in more, traditional studies of religion academically, you would avoid questions about the morality in the religion usually, and try to discuss it in an as neutral way as possible. Because when you study religion academically, you try to avoid value judgments. But here, value judgments and judgments about how to interpret something is at the core in discussing religion in a more everyday way, or even in a religious context of discussing religion. And these discussions of religion can take many forms. It can be a debate format where you try to convince someone else or try to argue in front of a crowd for your case when it comes to your religious beliefs, be they for a religion or against a religion. debunking or proving the religion. These include apologetics and polemics. These debates do not necessarily have to be verbal. You can write them also in written format and make books arguing for religion or something. And you can also have discussions about interpretive issue discussions when you are inside a religion or outside of a religion, where you argue that a certain interpretation is correct or incorrect. Are you all following me? Because, when you're inside a religion or outside of a religion and you want to discuss the religion normatively, that is to say, with prescriptive values or giving values to certain things, saying that this ought to be or this ought not to be, then you are, in many cases, making interpretive issue discussions about how should these things be interpreted, and should we follow these interpretations or should we not follow them, and why and how. These questions are not really questions that an academic study would deal with. They would rather try to describe these discussions or describe this discourse that exists around an issue or something like that, rather than studying an issue and argue for a certain position academically. Though there are certain exceptions to this, as I argued in the previous live stream, that you do have philosophy of religion where you do have certain value judgments actually posed upon the material. So it's not entirely that, discussing religion religiously and discussing religion in the study of religion are two entirely separate things when it comes to value judgments. But generally, there is this distinction. And, looking at debates and polemics and apologetics and various traditions of interpreting things, these can actually also be a subject of study in itself for the study of religion. Though you rarely, or sometimes you can argue that certain discourse is not promoting the religion or is going against the spirit of the religion and such. But generally, you do not discuss your own discourse in the same way that another might study your discourse and explain it academically, generally, inside of a religion. So this is a difference too from the study of religion. I will also say one thing general about my channel. Personally, I try to keep separate from the study of religion and the stuff I do on this channel, discussing religious subjects in an authoritative way with prescriptive elements of value judgments. Sometimes I will discuss matters that relate to certain value judgments, but I try on this channel to not judge things morally or try to enforce my morality upon my viewers or try to spread some sort of message about what religion to follow or what beliefs to have or how to interpret something as being the true religion. That is not what I try to do on this channel. I try to explain things generally and try to interpret things, generally in an analytical manner rather than in a prescriptive manner where I try to impose something. Rather, I try to explain why people think or believe, not how they ought to believe or think on this channel. So this is a pretty important part of this channel, connected to discussing religion religiously in comparison to discussing religion in the study of religion. But it ought to still be said that I will get into some normative statements here still. So I will break this thing that I claim here a bit, because it is relevant to what I'm going to discuss now. And that is that discussing religion is an art. It's a art form because it includes a lot of rhetoric. It includes a lot of skills, people skills, to actually, do it in a good way. Because religion is a sensitive topic. A lot of emotion is connected to it. It's also, and connected to this is also that it's an important topic. It is involved in society, politics, and social relations. After all, religion holds a lot of societies together and is the primary cultural element in a lot of everyday life for many believers. And thus, it becomes, and many believers have a deep emotional connection to these beliefs. So you're talking about a very sensitive and important topic here when you discuss religion with believers. But I agree with this. It can be such a sensitive topic, yeah. And I think especially if you are the one that engages in discussing religion in a religious manner, or in a ethical manner, or anything that isn't just the study of religion, when you're discussing with a believer, you have to keep this in mind. You have to be sensitive to the fact that this is a sensitive and important topic, and deal with it in a very serious manner. Personally, that has always been my view of how you should approach religion, because believers think that their faith is important. Of course, you can have weak believers that do not think that, but I'm talking generally about people that do keep their faith extremely strong, or have it so that religion is very important for them. And this is also an important other points regarding this. That also means that it's an art. Religion has a lot of expressions. Not all religion is the same. And I'm not only talking about that different religions are different, like Islam is different from Hinduism in, very fundamental ways. But I'm talking about, even if you discuss Islam, not all expressions of Islam will be the same. You will have individual versions of Islam, individual interpretations. You will have various groups within Islam that have their own standardized interpretations, and you will have various local variances of interpretations as well that an individual might follow. So, and you also have these differences also between personalized religion that the believers personally believe, and standardized greater religion. And it's important that you keep these differences in mind when you discuss religion, and when you talk with a believer, because his version of the religion might not be, and often isn't, the same as the one that you encounter in, for example, the standardized texts of the Holy Scriptures, or of the interpretations made by the authorities within that religion, be they interpreters of the holy text or even holy sources in themselves. So these are things that you need to be aware of, and this is why I say that discussing religion religiously and as and in a normative manner is an art form, because you need, if you want to convince people, or if you want to understand people and get a great understanding in a more interactive, normative way, rather than just studying it there in a very sterilized manner, you need to be aware of these differences, because these differences that exist between the standardized religion and the believer's religion can be vast. And if you begin to discuss a religion as being a certain way and the believer do not agree with this, then you're going to make that believer feel uncomfortable, and he is going to, put his hands on his ear and not listen to you, because you're not speaking to his religious experience. You're not speaking to him and what he believes. Instead, you're speaking about some sort of standardized religion that differs from what he actually believes. Sure, in terms of your video's content are pretty neutral, but your video titles sometimes infer an opinion like Dark History of X just to provide a minor critique. Actually, Dark History, yeah, it does maybe have, implications of a value judgment, but I actually use the term dark there more as in dark horse, as in unknown, rather than as in the implications that it's bad history or it has, darker elements that should be morally judged. And it's kind of like a play with the word there to make people assume one thing, jump into it, and then I will present something in a more neutral manner than that they thought I would, because I actually use the term dark in a different way. So yes, you can argue that it's kind of like a, a little bit of a false advertising, but it's also, and it is intentional in that way, kind of from my side. But it's also kind of like you have to do this if you do YouTube. You have to draw people in. But I will never sacrifice actually my standards of rigor and trying to be as objective as possible and as fair as possible to the material when I discuss history, religion, or other matters. The only exceptions to these will be in my controversial opinion series, where I will actually argue my opinion and my values into it. Uh, it's like, yeah, I can try to do it in such a way. Make sure to be as respectful as possible. Yes. Popular Christian notions like people who die become angels, or angels are cute floating babies. Not sure they have anything to do with Christianity. Actually, that's a good example of, how standardized religion, especially when you look into the sources of Christianity, actually describe angels as something very different. Angels in the biblical traditions are described as usually very terrifying beings and something very separate from humanity. But in popular, Christian notions by, the common believers, angels and, people that die are kind of like the same thing. And cherubim, or, these baby angels, are also something that is very popular in, popular history. And they have also, also sipped into standardized religion in certain ways and been integrated into standardized interpretations from more popular views of angels. You can see this in a lot of official religious art within Christianity, that angels are depicted as, these cherubim, child angels, or as, beautiful human beings, and people that have died are depicted as angels. Lots of Abrahamic religions also describe angels as beautiful humans when visiting prophets. That's true, as well as they can take human form. But I meant probably more when I discussed this, more the form of winged human beings, when they, you know, visit prophets and or visit, for example, when they enter the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah in the Old Testament, they are described as being very, beautiful human beings, but they aren't described as people with angel wings. Yes, they take the take the form of a human. They take the form of human beings, but they aren't this popular view of human beings with, you know, wings. And this, you can even see this in depictions of angels in Islam, where angels are depicted as human beings with human wings. But if you look at the original sources of the Quran and the Hadiths and such, you will see that for example, Jibrail is described as an angel with that is covered in wings. He isn't just a guy having wings. He's like a sea of wings which spans the entire sky and such. There are very extreme descriptions of angels in the Islamic traditions that aren't reflected in the popular imagination of angels. And it's interesting because this popular view of angels, sure, it did exist even before Islam, even in pretty, early Christianity too, but it didn't actually get into the mainstream popular view until later in the history of both Christianity and Islam. Like a common popular religious view. That was something that happened much later. So, and that would be a perfect example also of how popular, views of angels or views upon religion actually become so standardized that they become a common part of religion. Yeah, I really like the mythological aspects of Abrahamic religions and reading about it. Yes. The religious traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam do have a lot of very cool stuff. I like to think angels are kind of like God's killer robots. In Islam, they supposedly don't have free will, and when they show up, things are about to go down. Yes, that's the common view of angels in most interpretations of Islam. Do angels having free will or not is one of those subjects that depends a lot upon groups, and it also actually depends upon which subdivisions of the groups you're in. For example, within Sunni Islam, it isn't actually consensus across all of the subgroups within Sunni Islam that angels are without free will. Uh, there are, for example, interpretations within the Maturidi school of Aqidah or faith theology that they believe that angels actually do have free will. And there was also, you know, uh, early too in their traditions, it was a great, discussions about if Iblis was, a jinn or an angel. The most common view is that Iblis was a jinn, but Abu Mansur al-Turidi actually went into this discussion and actually stated that saying that Iblis was an angel with free will that fell and became a shaitan or a devil is not grounds for saying that you are a non-believer. So, and regardless if an evildoer is a jinn or an angel having free will, it does not matter. The important part is that they are enemies of God, which this interpretation made by Maturidi that angels did have free will and could even be, fall into devils was also continued by later traditions within Maturidi interpretations of Sunni Islam. So there is, kind of like this also shows that if you ask, for example, a Muslim that is very into this stuff, that actually does believe in, for example, these Maturidi interpretations that angels do have free will, and might even believe that the origin of Iblis is of being an angel rather than of being a jinn, then you will, if you begin to argue, but how could you say that angels are doing this and that in these sources when they obviously don't have free will? How could they do this? How can they interact like this? But they do have free will for this believer and within this tradition. So just by your example, Taha, we can, observe that when we are discussing religions, especially large religions like Islam and the like, we need to be aware of there is a multitude of views. Not only can this person have individual beliefs that you need to pay attention to, but you also need to be paying attention to the fact that there are a lot of subgroups that differ even within the larger subgroups. Sunnism and Shiism are just two very Sunni and Shia within Islam are just two very broad categories. They have a lot of groups within them too. Especially Shia Islam with all of their subsects, where you can get from Zaydi to Twelvers to Ismaili Shia. And, these things, they are, when discussing religion with a believer, I will get to this point for further on. It's very important to be aware of these differences, because otherwise you might, without knowing it, offend them or make a stereotype of them that doesn't apply, or erect a straw man and attacking it, or whatever you're trying to do in a discussion. If you're trying to argue your case or not, or try to, learn something about a certain belief or something. But also, especially also when you try to learn how people interpret this, it would be kind of, strange to ask a believer that does not believe in something to explain why they believe in something if they do not have this belief. So, I mean, now of course, you cannot always know what a believer believes personally, always. So you have to ask them, about personal interpretations and try to, in some sort of nice way, try to, get at that information before you begin to engage in, more confrontative or more intensive discussion, depending upon your, objective when it comes to discussing religion or a certain matter in a religion. This is connecting to something that I will discuss now, to consider before discussing religion. Like any sensitive and important topic, it's important to consider if it is worth it. After all, religion is a topic that can create great controversy, and you can also have relationship issues due to, having discussed a religious matter or something. Because, if it comes forward that you have a controversial view on a certain religious matter, or some other finds your view controversial or extremely insulting, or vice versa, you might get into, personal relationship issues with these persons that differ from you. So consider if it's worth to, risk these things when it comes to, controversy and relationship issues. And B, you also have safety considerations, because certain believers or non-believers, because if you lived, or if you live in North Korea or in the old now defunct Soviet Union and uttered certain types of religious beliefs, you would face personal threats to your life and living, or punishment by the law. And the same applies also to certain states where where you have blasphemy laws or laws against diverging from the official religion or making certain religious statements. And sometimes these safety considerations can also just be risk of being exposed to an angry mob that will punish you even outside of the law. So you have personal threats, which are like, you can be threatened by the believers that you are discussing because he feels insulted and begins to threaten you due to feeling insulted, or you raising a question or issue that he feels he can't handle, and thus he threatens you. Or you can be threatened by an angry mob that hears about your views and find them controversial and problematic and want to get rid of you. Or you can be also punished by law in certain cases as well. So both of these cases need to be considered depending upon your context and how likely you think it is that these things can happen. I mean, there are even countries where apostatizing from a religion can result in your death, where you can be punished by the death penalty if you apostatize. And depending upon the issue, you also need to consider if it is important enough in comparison to the ones above, to the two problems I mentioned above. You need to weigh it. I mean, if you're in a situation where you think that the punishment for discussing really a religious matter will outweigh the benefit that you can gain from discussing it, then it might be better to not discuss it. I'm not saying that this is always the case, and in certain cases you need to make a stand for certain issues if you feel that these issues are important enough. But consider if you're, for example, in a situation where your boss is a deeply religious man or woman, and you feel that you disagree about some religious matter, then telling that to the boss that can fire you and that otherwise has treated you nicely and without fault would be maybe not the best thing to do, for example. Now I'm going to answer some questions. It's also interesting how much can interpretation change when science progresses and new things are discovered, like, for example, round versus flat earth in Quran, or geocentrism and heliocentrism. Yes, because religion is also very much a reflection of the believers in many cases, in how it is practically applied. And when people that believe in a religion faces issues of an older interpretation not working anymore due to new information or something new appearing that makes an older interpretation problematic, they will, rather than abandon religion generally, try or become atheist or become some sort of other type of believer. They will generally try to change their beliefs to a certain degree in order to integrate these new ideas, these new ways of looking at the world, this new information. And it can be pretty interesting to notice how people that get new information learn new things and thus change their interpretation as a result of this. And it's not very much different from If you have something that you believe in, even if it isn't religious, and you meet something new that goes against it, then you might, rather than abandon this older belief entirely, you might change it a bit in order to still accommodate this new information, but not to, discard everything. People generally are very conservative in how they change their beliefs, unless something very radical happens to them or it becomes very extreme. Then they might actually do radical changes in their beliefs. But generally, people will gradually try to accommodate different beliefs in various sorts of compromises, because they do not want to change radically. They want to change gradually, and also, still have their old beliefs. Because, again, as I mentioned before, beliefs, like religious beliefs, are very sensitive topics. It's a sensitive emotional matter for a believer. Hey, Jeannie, we love you. And I love you too, my dear viewers. Thumbs up to you. To all of you, my viewers. Basi, it will be very interesting to see how religion adapts to space travel, or alien or Mars life discovery, and even maybe robots. Yes, it will be very interesting to see how these new, or potentially new things, because we don't know really if, aliens exist. It's quite mathematically probable that they do, but we do not know if they do. Or, Mars life might be, simple bacteria, or rather Mars life is in most probability simple bacteria. But, you know and you could, and some people might argue that it's just life from Earth having contaminated Mars. But, especially in the case of robots, and when AI is going to become better and become much more human-like than it is currently, I will see that religion will be faced with a lot of existential questions. A lot of religions will be this, because, again, not all religions are the same. And I will be very interested in seeing how religions will adapt to these new conditions. Because many religions are quite centered around humanity being unique, in a manner of speaking. Because, either it is that God or the gods needs us for worship, or it is that we are created in the image of God, or, we are the only thinking animal that every other creature is, subordinate to. And when you create another thinking entity, this kind of undermines those thoughts, those assumptions, and religious beliefs will have to accommodate this. But I also think that religion is quite adaptable as a concept in many cases. I also think that, people that think that religion will disappear in the future when we have reached some sort of technological utopia, I think that those people are misguided, because they have a view of religion as being only about superstition and lack of knowledge as a result of those things. I actually think that religion has a lot of other functions too for humanity. I think it's connected to social, you know, norms. It's connected to social cohesion. Ritual is more about social gathering and coming together and creating identity, rather than it is, about questions of truth or falsehood generally. Apparently, in Islamic views, aliens are not problematic, since there is mentioned that God has created many worlds Yes, I would say that, I mean, Islam already has categories of other thinking creatures, the jinn, that are more or less the same as humans, except that they are created from the fire and are of the hidden world. I agree. I don't think religion on spiritual level would not disappear and will continue to influence us even in the far future. Good that we are in agreement. Islam is more flexible than most people think, so Muslim will be fine. I agree. I agree, Doha. I just had to, check that you are different from us before that made questions and statements here. Sometimes you do not want to, speak with someone and confuse him for being someone else when you are doing a live stream. But yes, Islam is more flexible than people think. So I do not think that we will see. I mean, all religions will, from my belief, viewing religion neutrally as a social system or system of ideas that are more connected to group identity and ritualistic function in order to I'm the same, just privacy concerns. All right. Uh it's okay. I try to, fair enough. But I when I discuss, for example, Islam, I discuss Islam as being a system created by man. I do not think that Islam, Christianity, Judaism, or any religion is created by a divine force. I think it's created by humans having, brought forth these beliefs in a historical context due to various cultural and material and social factors having all been the background for creating these religions, and also just personal influence. Because you can't, for example, I see Muhammad, for example, as having been a real historical person. I think he is, he existed as a prophet, even if he was not a true prophet of God. He was the main person behind Islam, at least in my view. And I think that these people that created Islam, or starting with Muhammad and then what got attributed to him and the traditions that evolved in matters of interpreting the holy text and interpreting certain things within Islam, these things will eventually, if you look at at a time span of several thousands of years, die out. Just like I think that Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, Zoroastrianism, or any Shintoism in Japan, or any other type of religion will eventually die out to be replaced by other new religions eventually. But that does not mean that I think that they will die out anytime soon. So, yeah, again, agreed. Islam is more flexible than people think. It will still survive for a lot of time in the future. I do not see any sort of great ending to Islam, and neither do I see it for Christianity or Judaism or any of the other major world religions. The religions right now I see that might be on the verge of dying out might be smaller people's religions, like smaller tribal religions of smaller groups. certain types of shamanism or spiritualism that are located in smaller groups or clans that practice it. With this said, I might continue now with the PowerPoint. And now you need to consider, as I said before, if it is worth it. Safety concerns and issues with relationships and the like, and the problems that can arise from them versus the benefits you get from discussing an issue or raising an issue related to religion, regardless if you're a believer in a religion or a non-believer. You need to always consider if it is important enough in comparison to the issues that can arise from it. And also, when it comes to an issue that is discussed, my tip, my tips to you, one of my great tips for you is that keep it limited. Extend only if needed. And that means do not discuss all problems at the same time that you have with a religion, or all issues or all matters with a religion. Even if you do not have a problem with the religion, just want to discuss a matter of religion, keep that matter limited. Keep it focused. Do not venture into other issues. Because when you discuss things generally, this is not only about religion. This is something that is generally true for all discussions, but it's especially important in religion due to sensitive and important of a matter religion is, that you keep focused, that you have a red line in the discussion, that you keep it limited to a certain area of discussion. So these are the things we are going to discuss, so you do not venture away and begin to discuss things that you are not prepared to discuss, because those things can very easily turn into discussions about things that get heated in ways that you do not have any control over, because you weren't prepared to discuss these extended things. And this is also very much true if you are having a debate rather than a mere discussion about an subject matter. Again, you also need to consider if it's going to be a discussion. For example, how do we reach the true interpretation of this issue, or a debate? I think this issue is wrong. You think it's right. Let's settle this by us discussing either verbally or writing polemics or apologetics about an issue. And also connected to this is also when discussing religion, consider if it is really an issue of religion or not. A lot of things that we apply to religion might actually not, as an issue being connected to religion, might actually not be connected to religion. Or it might just be, a cultural practice that is separate from religion. Or it might be interpreted locally as being, a religious issue, but the standardized version of the faith might say that it is not an issue of the religion. And thus, actually discussing the matter as being a part of religion might actually make it harder to discuss the matter. So for example, if you have issue X that is about religion, issue X is about religion, you think, but it turns out to actually be a cultural matter, then it's better to discuss it as a cultural matter than, even if it is connected to religion and culture at the same time. If it is just a local cultural religious thing, then it's better to discuss it as culture, because discussing a matter, as culture, usually, though culture is also very sensitive, it's usually less sensitive than religion. So if you can discuss also a matter about, for example, politics, where you have religious judgments, discuss it rather as politics than as religion, because you need to distance a matter that you discuss with regards to religion from the emotional and sensitive side in order to have a productive discussion or even a productive debate. Because you really should consider, do I have to discuss this matter as a religious issue, or can I discuss it in another issue like a matter of political policy, or as a matter of philosophy, or as a matter of something that is going to be less controversial for the believer or the non-believer, depending upon the case. Connected to this is that you also set limits on yourself and others, define boundaries and objectives before you engage in a discussion of religion. Define if you are going to have a civil discussion where you are more or less being very, very nice to each other, and avoid the most controversial subjects, even if it does not, you know, produce something very productive in this religious discussion. At least having a discussion might be productive in itself, as long as it does not hurt relationships or make people angry or upset. Versus if you're fine with, going on a more confrontative debate where you will be, accepting of having the of or proposing views that are confrontative, that makes people uncomfortable, because what you accept for others ought also to be what you accept for yourself in a discussion. Because you're discussing a very sensitive topic for the other person, and when you open up to do it in a way that is very confrontative, very aggressive, then you need to also accept that you will be faced by the same. So you should also define boundaries. How much am I, you know, ready to accept rough debates, or, a rough back and forth? If I'm not ready to, be confronted, then I shouldn't confront others in this subject matter, and vice versa. If I think that this is, if I think that I am getting confronted in a very aggressive manner, then I might actually define my boundaries and say, stop, I don't want to discuss this more, because I wanted a civil debate here, or a civil discussion. I did not want to get insulted. I did not want to get my boundaries here overstepped. I have tried to be civil with you, and please be civil with me in exchange for that. And this is very important when you discuss any sensitive topic, or any topic that is like religion. But I mention it here because religion is, by its very nature, often sensitive and important for people. Uh, but another point regarding keeping it limited is also to get somewhere. People underestimate the breadth, width, and depth of Islam. Yes, this is also true. This was also, kind of like, it was kind of connected. I was more talking about here, uh, about avoiding uh, discussions that are unproductive. But because when you get into these enormously vast topics, and you have pretty shallow knowledge about it, or you weren't prepared to discuss it, then it's easier that you will feel that a boundary has been overstepped, or the other will feel that a boundary has been overstepped, and things get naturally more confrontative when you do that. But you also have the fact of the matter, as you also mentioned here, is to get somewhere, because if you discuss everything, you discuss nothing, because you need to keep things focused upon a certain issue or topic. Otherwise, you might discuss something else. Of course, you can have more free form discussions about various matters connected to Islam and other religions. I mean, I'm doing it right now. I had, this idea about discussion in religion, and I've answered a lot of questions that weren't 100% within that definition, but I began to discuss religion generally with these topics because here I am trying to have a more very relaxed live stream where I more or less just interact with you. That is more of my priority rather than discussing religion with a very straight and narrow definition of discussing religion as the topic of discussion. But yeah, people underestimate the breadth, width, and depth of Islam. It has a lot of aspects. And you always need to, keep it focused upon specific issues when you discuss Islam, because, I also think that, you always have to do this regardless of religion. But Islam in particular, because unlike Christianity, where you have usually a very strict church hierarchy, though not in all traditions of Christianity, Islam has traditionally been more flat in its interpretive hierarchies and much more, how should I say, it has never had the same sort of hierarchy that you, for example, see in the Vatican and in the Catholic tradition of Christianity, which means that you have a lot of very diverse opinions and diverse traditions that can be within a subdivision of Islam. Never mind when you include all the subdivisions of Islam in the greater form of a greater Islam, if we can discuss, Islam as a totality of all the various groups and belief systems that relate to, the classical beliefs of Islam, in the belief of the Quran being the divine revelation and the monotheism of God contained therein, and the finality of Muhammad as the last messenger of God. But yes, it's very important to keep the matter focused when discussing Islam, because otherwise you will get drowned in various other interpretations and various other matters. Now, this does not mean that you can't change to a new topic when discussing religion. You can discuss several topics, but try to keep each topic contained in one singular discussion or debate movement, rather than jump back and forth between them, unless they are interconnected in a very obvious manner where it could be fruitful to do so. So that is one of my advice here. Set limits on yourself and on others. Define boundaries and objectives of what to discuss and what you also want to be discussed and how you want it to be discussed. Because again, when discussing, any subject, be it religion or be it not religion, you need to be aware of how do I act and what is it I'm discussing in regards to this, and how far am I allowing myself to go, and how far am I willing to sacrifice discussing this or expose myself to unpleasant repercussions, be they, as I said before, safety considerations with personal threats to your person made by persons, individuals, or punishments even by law. All of these things needs to be considered. And when those considerations are made, you also need to keep it focused because, again, you might also slide into other controversial matters when you do not keep it focused. And here it is discussing religion. Some things to keep in mind when discussing it that I might have mentioned before, but I will repeat them. Understand that religion is a worldview. Religion is what people believe in. It is how people view the world. Not everyone is a literalist, but religion in some manner informs how a person views the world, what they think reality is like. If it is created by a god, if it has spirits that are in everything, if certain things are moral or not moral, depending upon various religious prescriptions, how you should act in society, your station in society as well. Especially when you look at, for example, religions like Hinduism that has a caste system, then you understand your social situation by the worldview that is offered by religion. So, and understand this, that since religion is a worldview, I really people that believe in in a worldview will believe in it, even if it might be different from between various different believers having different beliefs. When you challenge a worldview, you're challenging something very fundamental to a person. Keep that in mind, that how would you feel when the things that you believe about the world, fundamental things that you believe about the world, are challenged? You would probably not feel that good. So when you are discussing with another believer that differs from you, try to keep this in mind, that this might be an issue that is very, connected to their worldview, how they view the world, and thus is something very fundamental to them. And keep in mind that you would probably not like it so much to be questioned on your fundamentals as well. Sure, I am always advising people, and this is prescriptive, that you're open-minded to challenges to your worldview. But I'm also aware that sometimes it can be too much, and you need to, retreat, and you feel like, I can't handle this. And have this view also about the other when you discuss religion with the other, because the other one might actually feel that your attacks or your questioning of his religious beliefs might be too much for him to handle. And you need to always consider that you are questioning his worldview, his fundamental worldview, when discussing religion in a certain ways, if it is set up in such a way that you are actually questioning it, or bringing it into question by having another view that you propose. Also be aware that religion can also be secondary too. For example, you can have, you know, sometimes religion is actually not the main point of religion. This might sound counterintuitive, but sometimes religion might be adopted more as a reflection of personal politics and personal reasons. For example, they might want something else in politics, but they see that everyone that support this is within this religion, and thus they join the religion, or they believe in the religion because others are believing in that, and they want to have the personal relationships. It's not that they necessarily believe in the religion, but it's useful for them to believe in the religion, or say that they believe in the religion due to other reasons. So keep this in mind, that sometimes these other reasons might be the things that you should discuss rather than the religion. And this is also, I was just checking to see if someone had put any questions. No, it's fine. or made other comments. Uh, as I was saying, religion can all be secondary. There was, I mean, you can have political reasons for joining a religion or for staying in a religion because everyone else that has politics belongs to this religion, or you gain, greater political contacts, or you gain some sort of political favor by being of a religion in certain situation. And there is also, again, there are a lot of myriad of reasons as to why people convert or why people stay in religions that aren't actually connected to the religious beliefs or the religion itself, rather than what it offers the individual or what the benefits are of being in this social group that the religion represents. Religion is also a part of a greater cultural heritage. This might not be the case of, new religions or, newer faiths that have appeared in modernity, but most of all of the greater world religions are parts of greater cultural heritages for people. The societies that most people live in are shaped by religion and have also shaped the religion. So when you discuss religion and culture as two separate things, you're usually making the mistake of assuming that religion can be separated from culture, because it cannot. I mean, the very word culture comes from cultus, which is like the cult, the ritual, the practices around the religion. Culture and religion are interlinked, and thus religion is interconnected with cultural identity. This is also very clear when you, for example, study a religion like Judaism, where a great part of the religion is connected to the cultural identity, where being a Jew is the cultural identity and it is also a religious identity. This does not necessarily mean that all Jews culturally are religious Jews, but the Jewish religion certainly have shaped and interacted with the cultural tradition of Judaism. They are interconnected, and you also see a lot of similar things also within Islam and Christianity and Hinduism and Buddhism, with how religion interacts, adapts and changes to suit local culture and become integrated as part of the culture, and also influences local culture. So religion is very much connected to cultural identities and cultural customs and beliefs and cultural heritage for the believer as well. It's unavoidable. Even if they say that I'm unaffected by my culture, I only believe in the true version of this faith. The reason as to why he has those beliefs is usually as a counterculture to the predominant culture, saying that, oh, I'm going to interpret this way because people locally are interpreting this way. And also, it is probably also a result of the fact that he grew up in a culture where that religion was dominant as well. So he just took it a step further and looked to the sources and said, oh, but I've been brought up in this religion, but we do not practice them locally as they are written in the sources. But it was still your local culture that actually taught your religion in many cases. Not always not always, sometimes you can be converted by someone doing missionary activity, or you being convinced of some sort of religious worldview by having been exposed to it by some other way, by searching for a new religion or a new way of looking at the world. And connected to this is that, religion is connected to a cultural heritage that the believer has, and that it's also a worldview. You should also understand that people are not stereotypes. This is the easy path to usually walk, to stereotype people in discussions, especially in sensitive, very complex topics where you feel you need to get your point across. You need to say it, but and you just feel so much for this sensitive topic because you know how important it is. You need to get the point across, and it's so complex otherwise. So you need to create this stereotype to get it out, but don't do that, because it's not the productive path if you want to convince people. Do not stereotype them. Try to treat people as far as it is possible and practical as individuals, as members of a subdivisions of religion. Because if you describe people as fitting a very certain mold, and they do not accept this mold, then they will see it as you imposing your stereotypes upon them, as you insulting them by saying that you are like this, you are like my view of this religion, you are my, or you are like this, and I don't care if you disagree, you are still standing trial for this straw man that I've created. And when you discuss sensitive topics, it's very easy to not understand the complexity in issues because you're so invested in it emotionally, because discussing religion is a two-way street. When you discuss a sensitive topic with someone else, not only is it a sensitive topic for them, but it's a sensitive topic for you as well in many cases, and you can bring out in a lot of emotional baggage into it as well. And if you are not careful, you might lose the productive path in discussion. You might lose the ability to convince the other, or the ability to discuss the matter, because you are so emotionally invested in disproving this thing, or going against this other believer's views and this other believer, that you lose the complexity of religion and the multitude of views that can exist in this issue, because you feel it's so important that you get tunnel vision, so you do not see the greater picture. And this is also very much with regards to practice versus source texts and standardized religion. How people practice religion in practice can differ a lot from how it's written in a source text or proposed in standardized religion in many regards. And connected to this, that people can have the very, very much individualized religion. You ought to allow people to be wrong in questions when you disagree in a religious issue. When you say, why are you not believing like this, when you say that you believe in this religion? I mean, if you think that is a wrong interpretation, maybe consider to allow them to be wrong. Allow them to have a divergent interpretation. And also allow people to, even if you disagree also with their own personalized interpretation that is not different from the standardized religion, also allow them to be wrong. People can have divergent interpretations, people can be wrong without being bad. Consider that. Consider just people that have different views upon religious issues to be different from you rather than wrong or bad. I mean, this of course depends upon the issues. In certain issues, I can very much, understand that you will not allow people to be wrong or have these wrongful views because they are so extreme or they are so, detrimental either to the believer or to others around the believer that you do not want to allow it. But, this might be the case, for example, if you have a believer that believes that human sacrifice is good to do, then you might actually not consider allowing the other believer to be wrong about this. But consider that most beliefs aren't on that degree of being potentially bad as, for example, human sacrifice. Most beliefs are pretty, most issues with various beliefs that you might find are usually pretty minor. And imagine if you were in the other's shoe when discussing these things. Imagine if someone came to you and discussed, every little tiny detail of your beliefs as being wrong because they are wrong. Even if you have good arguments for why they are wrong, even by, going against a religious source text, or you arguing that, for example, you are an atheist arguing against a believer, arguing for example, evolution, or arguing for various things that are wrong in a religious text about the universe. Even if you do have good arguments or bad arguments, this is irrelevant. Imagine if you were in the other shoe and here comes this guy and nitpicks on all of these smaller things and says, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. Even if it is that the other one is correct about, you being wrong. You wouldn't feel very good if someone always picked you, especially on very sensitive issues. This is also why when I speak with people about religion personally, I try to, give them a grace period before I discuss religion in my personal life again with them. If I saw that they did kind of like become uncomfortable, then I walk away and then I give them a period of maybe I will not discuss religion with this guy, even if he insists upon it, because he thinks that I'm wrong, until like a couple of weeks later. Because again, you do not want to be the one that constantly goes on and tells the other one that they are wrong, even if you're correct about them being wrong. All right. Some people might also just like the content, like the different stories, not unlike comic book collectors who discuss Batman issue 1907 versus Superman 43, etc. Nerd stuff. Oh, yes. Yes. This is, of course, also, some people are very much into, discussing religion because they think it's fun and they've set pretty, broad boundaries for discussing religion. And they might not even believe in the religion, or they might not, believe in the religion as in a literal sense. They just think that this is part of a very impressive cultural heritage that I like to interact with, that I like to, promote. A lot of religion is actually more practice than it is belief. It's more about, and I use practice here very broadly. It's more about, telling the stories rather than believing the stories. Using the stories as some sort of ideal and setting the context for a kind of greater cultural narrative, a greater cultural worldview, rather than believing this worldview literally. It is more about this is, discussing these stories is more about us reaffirming our identity, reaffirming that we are believers, reaffirming that we believe in this religion as, a kind of part of our heritage, a part of our culture. And and I am not a believer in Christianity. I will say that I will openly say that I am an atheist. But I will not deny that Christianity has had a large impact upon the culture and the, history of the society that I live in. And I will not deny either that I do find a lot of the stories found in the Bible very interesting, not only from a historical perspective, but also as a part of a cultural uh, element that has shaped the society I live in, that has been interpreted in certain ways, that has resulted through factors of history, through various events in, the society I live in. And this is also why I talked about discussion versus debate. For example, when I discuss these stories with, for example, another atheist, if he has a similar view to me, it might be, not us, debating if this is correct or not. It's rather discussing what impact did this have? How was it important for people in the past? Or is this not actually a pretty cool story if you disregard it as being something that should be viewed as being the truth? Rather, if you view it as being a story with a moral element in it, might we actually learn something from it? Because I think that religion, due to how religion is a result of various social processes and cultural pressures, is actually reflective of many good traditions as well, many things that have stood their test of time. Even if various religions often have their very much problematic elements that I sometimes think needs to be discussed, because I think I make the value judgment that I need to discuss these matters because they are problematic. Religion does also contain a lot of good stuff in it. Many of the world religions would not have survived if they did not contain a lot of beneficial things for society, or even beneficial things for individuals. Here, so was Moses a superhero? Uh, this is a very sensitive thing to, discuss in particular, but I will, I will discuss it now because I think that the benefits outweigh the potential costs here. I actually think that Moses, as a, ideal that people looked up to historically, actually acted a lot like a superhero. Kind of. I mean, there are differences in that people historically actually believed in the, and still believe, because we still have believers in the Abrahamic traditions, of being a true prophet. But, as a paragon of virtue, he is similar to a superhero, because Moses is a symbol of at least a system of virtue. We might think that these virtues aren't, relevant anymore, or that they are wrong, but at least they are virtues for the believers, the ones that hold Moses in esteem. Just like people that follow a superhero are believers, at least in the paragon nature of the superhero. They think that these virtues that the superhero represent are good, and they think that it's interesting seeing this character acting them out. So in this regard, yes, Moses was like a superhero. He wasn't a superhero because that's a very narrow thing that is bound to our modern culture. But he is similar in that both a superhero and Moses are paragons of virtue. Superman does borrow from Moses as babies. They were both sent off in cribs. And this is true. And you do have now. This was now Superman wasn't my absolute favorite of a hero, but I have heard that Superman was modeled on the Jewish experience of being the constant outsider. But I'm not that into comic history, so I don't know this by 100% certainty. But I have heard that Superman was kind of like modeled on the Jewish experience of being the outsider, and you do have, and the Jewish experience does kind of like reflect this greater paragon nature of Moses as well, of being the emigrant, being the outsider in Egypt that rose up and saved a people from persecution and led them to a greater destiny. But and Superman and is sure he does not rise up and lead the Kryptonians, but he does act as an outsider that acts as a moral, virtuous person that people look up to, that tries to stand against the tyranny of evil, just like Moses tried to stand up against the tyranny of the Pharaoh. And I do think that a character like Superman would not have been able to be appreciated as much if Western culture wasn't very influenced by a Judeo-Christian heritage. Superman would not have made sense in, for example, ancient Roman pagan times. In ancient Rome, they would have not really understood Superman. So I do think that a lot of the parallels and a lot of the virtuous behaviors of Superman are very much culturally bounded to a Judeo-Christian tradition. And there are parallels there that I think are interesting to go into depth with, but that I feel right now that I'm not that well versed in order to give this the treatment it ought to be given. If I was to make this into some sort of serious higher level discussion. Yes, I'm talking about making a serious higher level discussion about comic book superheroes, but you can actually do that in a very serious matter, academically, and professionally, if you really want to do that. Now let's continue with the PowerPoint. Yeah. Discussing religion, some further tips. Here, one of my first tips would be to do not discuss moral end claims without fundamental justifying assumptions. What do I mean with this? First here, do not discuss moral end claims without fundamental justifying assumptions. What I mean here is that rather than discussing morals, usually, discuss what underpins those morals. Discuss, for example, rather than saying what this God is, this God or this divine figure is claiming is bad. Discuss rather the principles behind this. For example, discuss why do you think that this interpretation of this being good or this being bad should apply today? Why do you think that this is a source to believe in, that we ought to follow? Why do you think that? Why can you not interpret this in a different way, like this? Is this not a more proper interpretation? Because when you discuss only value judgments, like moral end claims, without discussing fundamental justifying assumptions behind those claims, you always you many times you end up without actually getting anywhere, because you end up in a shouting match of saying good bad, without actually discussing what lies behind these assumptions of good and bad. Discuss why someone believes these moral imperatives that are in the religion. Discuss, for example, why should this imperative apply today? Why should we follow this? And then you can actually get to the core of the morality, rather than getting at the statement, or getting at only the statement, which can be accepted or denied without further thinking. It's important to discuss the underlying assumption. For example, if someone believes that a god is demanding something that you find reprehensible, ask, why do you believe this god? Why do you believe that this? Why do you believe in the existence of this god? Why do you believe that this god's commandments still apply in this situation today? Discuss those things rather than say that's wrong. You are doing this. You're hurting people. You are doing wrong. Rather discuss what leads you to think that this is good. What leads you to actually follow this or claim this? Fundamental justifying assumptions, religious or non-religious, regarding various, moral end claims and other statements. Discuss those rather than just go on and say this is wrong or this is right ethically. I see this a lot with atheists that try to discuss very fundamentalist believers, in that they seem to just assume that modern humanistical ethical ideas are true, and that people that go against them are wrong. And thus they just discuss, oh, you believe in X that is reprehensible and wrong. You believe in this is wrong. Look at how bad your religion is. Rather than discussing, why do you think that this God that you believe imposes this view should be followed? Or why do you think that this prophet is right? Why do you think that this source that says that this is the commandment is right? Why do you think that this should be applied today? Do you think that you do you think that you can't actually interpret this in other ways that does not lead to this? Why should we have a literalist or non-literalist interpretation that leads to this? Why not these other possible interpretations? Why is this statement prioritized over this statement? Discuss fundamental things like those that lead to these moral imperatives or statements about the world, rather than discussing bad or good only, without getting deeper behind of the various alternatives or various reasons for believing in the axiomatic cause of these beliefs. And here you can base arguments in knowledge from the study of religion. There are a lot of studies on various types of theology and thinking, and arguments for various moral positions in the study of religion, and use this to try to understand the other, try to understand what are the fundamental beliefs that leads this person into these views. It's important to have pre-understanding of a religion when you discuss it, in order that you might better try to, if you have an issue with his, moral ideas, in order to, go at the things that underpin those ideas, the things that are at the base of those ideas. Because otherwise, you're just saying you're wrong without actually going against the core beliefs that leads to this wrong view, or bad view, or noxious, damaging view of the world. Furthermore, be charitable. Do not resort to insults. Do not be an edgelord that tries to go on extremes and show how extreme you can be, or how extreme these beliefs can be in the other direction. I know that this is hard to do, especially if the other believer constantly insults you, saying that you should be exposed to X bad treatment in this life, or more often be exposed to X bad treatment in the afterlife. And I know it's hard to be the better person in discussions. And it's hard to not want to be a little bit of edgy and a little bit insulting just to get even. But try to avoid it. Try to also be charitable, to allow the other one to speak his mind. Not to, totally dominate, but to at least, say what he believes, and try to listen to him. And try to, do not, be a bad faith actor, even if the other one is that in a discussion. Try to be better. It's almost always better to be charitable and to allow people to speak their minds, and to confront the issues, rather in a non-confrontative matter. Because if you are confrontative, people will just lock themselves into their own bubble and do not want to engage, and do not want to change if they do lock themselves into this bubble. And a very good thing that I could make as a tip for doing this, as a piece of advice: ask what makes you believe this. Not how do you believe this is correct, or why do you believe this is correct. Ask what makes you believe this being correct. What? Because what distances the discussion away from the personal, the sensitive, the emotional, into the distant third object. What? Not how, which could be how the person is acting, or why. Why are you acting? What makes this acting good? Because what is a lot more distant. You want to create distance from the topic discussed emotionally, because you do not want to inflame the discussion and make it into a flame war. Usually, I could see some context where you could argue that that's actually productive, but in most cases it is not. You want to distance the thing discussed from, the person that you are discussing it with, so that they might consider it in a better light, in a much more neutral light, if you think that you are correct and you have the truth on your side in regards to this question. And also, with regards to this, keep it focused upon the ideas rather than a person or religious figures. And what do I mean by the person? I mean the person that you're discussing this with, or the believers generally. Keep keep it focused upon the ideas of the issue discussed. Keep it focused on the ideas, not on the believers, because otherwise you're probably going at some moment going to resort to the ad hominem logical fallacy of attacking the person, and you also make make it so that people feel attacked for their beliefs rather than making it so that you focus upon the belief or the ideas rather than a person. You want to attack the ideas and the beliefs. You do not want to attack the person, or at least not make the person feel attacked for having them. And why did I say religious figures? Because religious figures like the prophets and the theologians are important figures within religions. Why should you not attack them? Because again, you are attacking persons, and people will identify with these persons as being, connected to them. They will. A lot of beliefs where a lot of religions that are very focused upon prophets and the charisma of individual persons, be they Christianity with Jesus or Islam with Muhammad, will connect the believers with the persons. So instead of discussing, for example, Muhammad, which, by the way, is also a historical figure, and I think that historical figures shouldn't be moralized, discuss the actions. Discuss it, for example. Of course, you argue that this action is correct because this prophet did this action. But what makes it a good idea to do this action now in this context? And what makes it good to do a literalist interpretation and applying what happened in the past to what happens right now? Rather, you're not saying that the prophet or the holy figure is bad. You're just saying this is not a good idea what is happening here to be applied right now. Because if you want to discuss what happened in the past, I don't think you should really moralize it. You should just say, all right, this happened, this action was happened, or this commandment was given in this context, and or this action resulted in these things. You shouldn't morally judge those things. But if they want to apply these ideas right now, you should discuss the ideas rather than the person behind the ideas. Just imagine kind of like if this religious figure lived today and did these things that you think are reprehensible. A better way than attacking the person would be to argue against the arguments for these things or the actions themselves as a principle rather than attacking the person or the religious figure. Again, this might be kind of like strange, especially for religions where the religious figure's moral character is extremely important for the beliefs. But I find personally that it's better to actually question the moral actions or the moral beliefs and what undermines them with regards to philosophical and logical considerations and contextual considerations, rather than going and attacking the character of the person that did it when it comes to religious discussions. So instead of saying that Muhammad or Jesus or Buddha were bad persons, I say these things that they did in these contexts are problematic due to these reasons right now. And what makes you think that this is a good idea to apply these actions that were done in this very different context today when we have very different systems around? Sure, this can be hard to do, especially when you do not have all the contextual knowledge to actually make these arguments, but it's usually a better way of doing it. I'm not saying this is easy to do, to always keep it focused only upon the ideas rather than a person or really or religious figure. But it's a tip. It's a tip for and a piece of advice for future conversations, that try to strive towards that ideal instead of attacking the person. Try to argue for the acts being not fit in a current context, or say that, how do you know that this is what the person actually meant in this different context, or what makes you trust the source about this religious person, this holy figure. And I've also some further tips. Be extra nice in the beginning and end of any discussion or debate when it comes to religion. This is a general rhetorical trick in that people pay more attention in the beginning and end of discussions. And thus, be extra nice in those parts towards the other part. And also, people will probably watch you having these discussions. Be extra nice and focused upon making those good. And finish with your strongest argument or point when discussing religion. Again, discussing religion isn't just about being right or wrong in a discussion when it comes to logic. It's also about being good in rhetoric. And this is very much, a rule in the rhetorical discussion, where you ought to finish with your strongest argument point. And and connect to this is that if you said it in the beginning, repeat your strongest argument in the end too, to really hammer it home what your point is. And also accept that you will mostly not succeed in convincing them. If you speak with a believer that have a different belief, just like I said before about allowing people to be wrong, accept that you will not convince everyone, that you will not persuade everyone that you're right. Even if you say your strongest point in the end, you might not be able to convince them. Accept that you will most likely not succeed in convincing people that you discuss religion with. And as a last point, when discussing religion, always try to learn something from the discussion. Either you learn something about the other person or persons involved in the discussion, about them personally in the discussion, so that you're better prepared for future conversations with them. Or you learn something about the religion itself, or you learn something about how to view the world, or how other people view the world with regards to religion. Or you learn that you have weaknesses yourself. Try to always have in mind to learn something. All right, what have I learned from this discussion? It might not be something very great that you have learned. If you learned that this discussion was useless and that it didn't lead anywhere, at least you have learned to not discuss this matter anymore with this person, if that was the point of it. But try to always think at the end, what have I learned from this discussion? What have I observed from this discussion? This is, again, what I'm saying here when I'm discussing religion as a subject, could be applied to almost any discussion with regards to important topics and things that you should have in mind when you discuss these topics. Because discussing religion is actually not that different from any other topic, because religion is so broad, since it's a worldview, that it can, you know, be connected to almost any matter and be almost any matter when you think about it broadly. And thus, very broad principles also apply to religion. Any questions? There is no one that wants to pose any questions or add any comment. If that is the case, that no one wants to add anything, then I might finish this live stream right now. Is that okay with you, my viewers? All right, then I will be ending this live stream after having gone through this PowerPoint discussing how to discuss religion. It was good interacting with you, my viewers. I hope to see you in future live streams. See ya!